Namaskar. Jai Hind.
Namaskar.
Welcome to my show, The Untold Saga. I'm your host, Puneet Singh Mehra. Today again, I'm here with a new story, a history which is buried inside the ground. And for today, we have our special guest, Mr. Jay Chauhan, who is the author of Love in the Empire. Hi, Mr. Chauhan. How are you?
Fine, fine. Puneet, it's a pleasure to be on your program. And today I gathered that you're going to tell the story of the kind of courage of the Indian soldiers in the 1918 War of Haifa. So I look forward
Yes,
to that history from you, and then I'll give you my observations of the historical perspective of that event.
sure. So let me tell you the story of liberation of Haifa in Israel. So today I'm going to tell you the story of valor of Indian army which liberates Haifa from the Ottoman empires. They fought courageously against the Ottomans. So Battle of Haifa, which was fought on 23 September 1918 in Israel. So what happened when the World War first outbreaks? British army wants to capture the Haifa. So they send their entire troops against Ottoman empires, which according to their intels, they thought that it's easy to capture Haifa. But they were wrong. Haifa is captured by the Ottomans with their machine guns, with their artilleries. So Britisher was fully defeated by the Ottoman empires. They need someone who has valor in their blood. So they asked for assistance from the Indian Maharaja of princely states of Jodhpur, Mysore, and Hyderabad, which they agreed to send their troops to fight against the Ottomans. All three princely states of this army are under the commandership of Major Dalpat Singh. He was a young, brave cavalryman. He was 25 years old. Once they reach into the Battle of Haifa, all the Britishers are retreating the ground. It is literally said that Haifa is impossible to conquer, to capture, because it's fully fortified by the Ottoman empires. The minute Major Dalpat Singh and his army reached to Haifa, Britishers gave them an option that they are retreating. And they also told to Dalpat Singh that they also need to retreat because it's impossible to capture. Which Major Dalpat Singh said to British army. He said, "We are India's finest Rajputs. Once we enter into the battlefield, there are no turning backs." And Major Dalpat Singh and his army of Jodhpur Lancer, Mysore Lancer, and Hyderabad Lancer, they moved forward against the Ottoman empires. Once they crossed over the Kishon River, Major Dalpat Singh said to the Mysore army that they can go and capture the Sound Caramel from the west. So Mysore Lancer, they moved towards the west, and the Jodhpur Lancer, they crossed the Kishon River to attack the Ottoman empires. Within 1 o'clock, Mysore launchers charged against the German officer Haifa. A war which never happened before. Even the Britishers agree this is a war which never happened before in the past nor in future. Major Dalpat Singh has an army of 435 soldiers, Indian army. So swords against the machine gun, horses against the tanks, spears against the artillery. And the Ottoman Empire, they have 3 times more army than the Indian army troops. But when they charge against the Ottoman empires at 1 o'clock, Mysore Lancers fought bravely. They were steep-trapped to mountain, but they charged with valor. And first of all, the Ottoman Empire thing is just a cavalry unit. It have a sword, but they really don't know the history of that cavalry. It's not just some ordinary army. These are the Rajputs. Rajputs are known for their valor. Within 1 o'clock, Mysore army captured the Sand Caramel. And what happened then? Major Dalpat Singh, he was 25 years old. He told to his army, to Jodhpur Lancer, to charge against the Ottoman. When they crossed the Kishon River, they were under the heavy fires of machine guns and artillery. In that battle, Major Dalpat Singh was severely wounded. He got hit by the machine gun bullets and the artillery shellings. Britishers already retreated that war because they simply said it is impossible to capture. But when Dalpat Singh got severely wounded, the captain Amar Singh, he took the charge and he told to Major Dalpat Singh that today Haifa will liberate from the Ottoman Empire, and he promised that. In the modern daylight, at 2 o'clock, Jodhpur Lancers charged against the Ottoman Empire, which is a fully fortified walls and is fully covered with the machine guns. But they charged with the banner, and somehow they enter into the city. When they enter into the city, they fully charge against the Ottomans. And the Ottomans have the Turks, the Germans, and the Austrians, which are far greater than this army. Which the Ottoman also said, this army is not just a regular army. They were fierce on his side. They were hungry lions. They don't have any guns. They only have the swords. The swords against the machine gun. But they fought with brave. Within 1 hour, around 2 o'clock, the Haifa was liberated by the Ottoman empires. It fully captured by the Indian troops. And the next day, when the British army went over there to check the surrounding, they get to know like 1350 Ottoman officers and Germans were prisoners, 35 officers were captured, 15 Ottoman officers were captured, a naval gun, 15 machine gun, artillery shelling has been totally captured by these Indian troops. They fought with so courageously that today the Haifa gave him the title of Heroes of Haifa to Major Dalpat Singh in Israel, in Haifa. They taught them the lesson of Hero of Haifa to their children, of the brave Indian troops. Not only they liberate the Haifa from the Ottomans, Mysore Lancer, they also saved the spiritual leader Abdul al-Baha, and he also spoke something of the Indian courage and bravery. He said, please listen, he said, 7 sovereign powers of the world endeavored for 200 years to release Haifa from the hand of the Turk, but failed. While you, through the power and help of God, have taken the land so speedily and so easily. He also added, the power of India have a wonderful capacity to become spiritual. They are naturally inclined toward God and religion. They are pure and God-fearing. Most of the people of the world have lost their faith, but the people of India retain it and are firm in their belief. They are both people of faith and intelligence. Even with the Israeli, Mr. Yahav said, Dalpat Singh not only changed the history of my city, but the history of the Middle East. That's a war which never happened before. An army against the army, which is 3 times more than the Indian troops. A swords against the machine gun, spears against the artillery, horses against the tank. That's the valor of Indian Army. And after 2 years, they built a three-statue chalk in New Delhi, which now renowned as three-statue Haifa chalk, to the memorial site of this brave soldier. And I would like to thanks to all my Jewish community and to all my Israelis. Remember this story till now. And they also taught to their children of the bravery of these troops. To all my Jewish community, a big salute. And thank you so much for that one. So, Mr. Chauhan, what do you think about of this story?
So firstly, Puneet, I'm impressed with your research, and you're a very young man. I'm very, very keen to hear the unexplored parts of the history that you're narrating. So we'll look forward to doing more programs. But I want to put what you said in the last 10 minutes into perspective. So let's go back and understand it from the world history point of view. The number one, that the Indian soldiers liberated Haifa, which is now a part of Israel. Israel got its independence in roughly 48, but it was a place where this war took place. Let's also put it into context. This happened in 1918, just toward the end of the First World War. And what was the First World War about? It was essentially Germans. It started in Austria, moved to Germany, and then Germans fought the rest of the Western allies, which is in England and France. They were the major powers. Yeah. This is the story within the bigger story. So the world knows the history of the First World War. The world knows about who won the war. In fact, the First World War ended in about 1918 in the Treaty of Versailles, which is just around Paris, where the European powers came together. But when they came together to sign the treaty, they did not invite the Indian troops to sit there, the commanders and the Indian people, and say, let's join you as a part of what you did in Haifa. So I want you to keep that in mind. So when we understand history, we should understand our role as Indian people in the role that we played through military campaign, our valor, our ability, what you described. But we should put it in a context. So as I said in my social media message today, which is under the under the Love in the Empire portion of my Facebook, that history is written by the victors. So the British won the war, and the Haifa War was won by the British in the Middle East with Indian troops who supported the British at that time. So all the valor that you described, the credit went to the British people, not to the Indian people. And today, I did not know the story, but I'm sure that I saw, and when I researched the topic myself, I became aware that in Israel, they also celebrate this liberation of Haifa, which is a part of the Israeli history now, that the liberation took place as a result of the valor, the courage of the Indian soldiers. And talking about that courage, the British Empire, in their history of the building of the British Empire, about which I wrote a little bit in my novel, which is Love in the Empire story, which I portrayed the history in the post-Second World War history. The important thing to remember is that England Britain played a very important role in projecting the image of the victor of the war. So much of the history is written by them in terms of their role. And the Indian people and their courage and their history has not been fully recognized. In this Haifa war, there was one British officer who made a comment that the British could not have obtained their empire without the support of the Indian troops, which is very true. But when you see all the celebrations of the Remembrance Day and other celebrations in the West, there is no mention about the fact that the Indian troops were an integral part. The particular part, for example, of the Gurkhas and the Sikh regiments and the Rajput regiment that you mentioned, you're a part of that history. So are we actually. We are the Chauhans, as you know. So our ancestors played a role, but we were forgotten. So I think you and I will remember that part of the history and we want to bring it across to the rest of the world in
Yeah.
terms of the part that we play, because India is changing its particular perspective that it has been a major power economically, even militarily, actually, in
True.
before the Muslim conquest, 1,500 years to be precise.
Yeah.
But that history has been buried deep in the ground, it's not understood. So it's your job and my job to bring it out from the ground and let the world know actually what the Indian people have done for 1,500 years.
Yeah.
And that role of the Indian community was not understood actually because the Muslim people conquered Prithviraj Chauhan in 1192. And so they wrote the history, and very often wrote the history in the Muslim period in the small books that historians went along with the sultans and the Mughal emperors in carrying that history. So that history that you are portraying today is very often buried also in the Muslim period of the Indian history. Then, of course, 1857, there was the British called it the Mutiny, which was the War of Independence in the Indian history, was the time when the British East India Company actually conquered Delhi and turned over the command of the entire Indian subcontinent in the hands of the British Parliament and the British Crown. So then they wrote the history, and then also the rest of the public, including the Jewish public, including the Indian public and the British public, do not know the history as it happened. So it's your job and my job to bring it out. So I appreciate
Sure.
you're digging the history and also helping me to understand the history, because I'm of Indian origin, and the reason I was born in Africa is because my father spoke up in Gujarat, actually in Rajkot, against the occupation of Britain of India, and he lost his job as a teacher, and he had to leave the country. And I was born in Africa. That's a part of our family history, which I portrayed in my novel Love in the Empire. So I hope everybody gets a chance to read that story. It's on Amazon, and so we'll conclude the chapter today with thank you to you, and I hope that the Jewish people watch this video, Indians and the British as well, and the rest of
Sure.
North America, so that we see the history of India in a proper perspective.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
And so, John, I would like to add one more thing. My father is also in military, right? So my dad told me one thing, that war is never won by the guns or swords. It's won by the valor of men and women. So to all of my viewers, remember one thing: a willpower of a man and woman, a bravery of a man and woman is far greater than anything in the world. That's the thing I would like to say. But yeah, I would like to thanks to all my Jewish community and to all my Israelis. I really want to go to Israel and meet with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I like him. But yeah, when his time comes, I will go and meet him. But thank you so much to keep our story and spirit of our Indian troops. Thank you. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Jai Hind. Jai Hind.
Thank you.